Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for this latest Rootwurks webinar, How AI Will Change Food Safety. My name is Ben Hartman, and I'm the content manager here at Rootwurks, and I'll be your host for this webinar today. So in all types of industries, from healthcare to high tech to education and beyond, we're seeing AI tools playing a bigger and bigger role in all types of daily operations. And that's something that we can expect to increase exponentially in the months and years to come. But often when people talk about these tools, there's something of a theme of concern, even sometimes fear about what it'll mean, for the rest of us. Will these replace people in the workplace? And instead, in this webinar, we want to talk about the ways that AI tools will actually help augment and optimize and complement the work of food industry professionals, in particular when it comes to food safety. So that's what we're going to look at today, and we've got a couple experts here to help us make sense of it. First, we got Rootwurks CEO and founder Chase Eastman. Hi, Chase.
Hi. Pleasure to be here.
Definitely. Pleasure to have you. So Chase has more than 15 years in experience in content development, e-commerce, social media, and multi-channel go-to-market strategy, and also spent more than a decade in senior roles at one of the world's largest food industry training companies. Always great to have you with us, Chase. Also, one of our favorite guests, Joel Chappelle, attorney and consultant with Food Industry Counsel LLC. Joel has expertise in all types of all areas of food production, federal regulatory compliance, product safety, and supply chain risk. Not only that, also a U.S. Army veteran, and he's worked for a number of the country's largest food companies, helping them navigate all these different complex safety issues, many of which we'll talk about today. Before we get started, though, we did put together a survey for people to send in to questions. If you look at the comments on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, you'll see in the first comment there's a pinned link to this survey. And so if we just get some feedback, we can use that in the talk. And also just feel free to send in any comments or anything that you may have. We always like to hear from people. One thing, when we were putting together this presentation, we found some really interesting surveys that people have recently taken about AI in the workplace just from the last year. And things change pretty quick in AI. So luckily, this is quite recent. This YouGov survey in March, they asked people, how do you feel about AI? 54% said they were cautious, 22% scared. So that's, more than 3/4 said they were either cautious or scared. At the same time, there is a lot of excitement, about 20%, 19% hopeful. And then one thing to keep in mind with all this, more than a third, 37%, of respondents said they hadn't used AI tools. So it could also be just a lack of familiarity and kind of fear of the unknown. At the same time, half of all people, more than half, said they are a bit concerned that there could be a loss of jobs and maybe we need more regulation. But definitely some interesting takeaways there. And then if we look at, there was also a Forbes survey that asked business owners, where they see using AI in the workplace. And if we scroll over to that one, let's see if we got that one. Yeah, so they had 600 different business owners. It's a pretty good survey sample. 30% said they could see it being used in supply chain operations, 40% inventory management, and more than half to improve production processes. At the same time, more than a third said that they're a little bit concerned about how to use AI, if they'll have the technical kind of savvy to do so. And almost half, 43%, said they kind of have this fear, similar to what other people feel, that, what happens if we become too reliant on AI? So definitely it's a topic that a lot of people are talking about and are interested in some ways concerned, but it's something that's going to be a big part of our daily lives in all types of industries, including in food. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about it some. I thought, Joel, I just start with you. I guess, what ways are we already seeing AI tools play in food safety? It's a bit of a broad one, but I guess a couple different examples of how you've seen it play out?
Sure. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for having me today. And Good morning and good afternoon to all of the attendees, and thank you for being here. AI is exciting stuff, but it is also something that, as I think most new technologies do, does create some consternation and concern among really all subsets of people. And I personally believe that AI is going to do remarkable things. And it's going to give us remarkable new abilities that one, aren't present now, or B, to the extent that they may be present, will allow us to do our jobs much more efficiently, and to capture much broader patterns that we might not otherwise be able to tease out of data. In terms of your question, Ben, about what are we seeing already? We see AI is already being used in the food industry for various types of risk assessment. It can be a crucial tool really in any industry that involves complex data analysis, which of course the food industry does. But in addition, we also see it used in terms of just bolstering traceability, for instance. And also a lot of AI applications in the food supply chain. AI is efficient at enhancing traceability by, again, quickly being able to take a large and complex data set and distill it down into patterns. Additionally, we see AI used to monitor various stages of food production and distribution, identifying hazards, contamination, even spoilage. And I'm really excited to see as these tools are further developed and further improved upon, just how much we're going to be able to use AI as a tool to serve us in doing our jobs, and rather than being worried about AI replacing our jobs, which I think at least for now is something that is perhaps a bit of an overblown concern.
Yeah, I understand a little bit to some extent overblown. When people are talking about AI, I guess, is there kind of a rather concise way to explain sort of the difference between AI and machine learning? Because they're kind of used interchangeably, and they're two different things.
Yeah, absolutely. So generally speaking, artificial intelligence refers to the simulation of human intelligence, the way our brains work, and what basically computer science is trying to do is develop in machines the capability to think and in many cases act like human beings. AI encompasses a very broad range of techniques, which include machine learning, also include natural language processing, natural language processing, like with Chat GPT, for those of you who've used it. Additionally, it's used in robotics and computer vision. AI systems can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as understanding language or, like I said, recognizing data or patterns, solving problems, helping to make decisions. Machine learning, on the other hand, is a subset of artificial intelligence, or AI, and it involves really the development of algorithms and statistical models that enable computers or machines to learn and make decisions or predictions based on that data.
Oh, makes good sense. And Chase, I think if we could, I guess, a little closer to home with Rootwurks, how do you think these AI tools will play a role in training when it comes to training for safety, all types of things?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. What I love about AI is it's moving faster than any technology that I've ever been a part of or I've ever seen. And so what we talk about today, as we were just discussing, it could be outdated in 3 to 4 months from now with how quickly it's moving. As it relates to training, one of the things that I think is so powerful about AI is its capacity to supplement your current team structure, right? So depending on how you're organized as a team, when you think about training or learning or quality, right? There are so many different ways that you could leverage AI to take on interconnection between your resources or your team members and supplement that skill set. So somebody who knows boots on the ground quality in incredibly strong way has spent years on a manufacturing floor. You couple them with some training on how to write AI prompts effectively, and you could use AI to build training outlines and voiceover scripts for PowerPoint based on the expertise, right? And so there's ways you could do that. There's ways that you could leverage AI for voiceover, where you lay voiceover over or video editing, illustration work and graphics creation. There are models and AI tools now that focus on that. I will caution that the use cases, right, with some of this, it's moving so fast. So specifically when you come into image creation, there's a lot of debate going on in that space of who owns the IP with a graphic or an image. So I would caution, use cases around trademark labels or logos or stuff like that. Right now, there's still that's an area where it's very fluid. But for internal training materials and things of that nature, you have quite a bit of flexibility to provide contextual training, right? And so, we're testing and playing around with it in all aspects of training development internally right now, and looking at ways that we can provide those in an integrated fashion to our current customers. But I mean, there's countless ways that it might be able to help you. But the first and foremost is use it as a way to adapt to your current team. It shouldn't be if you ever hear somebody say this is the out of the box way to use AI, and that's really the only way, that would throw red flags for me, because it's an immensely flexible tool, depending on kind of how you want to utilize it.
Right. So what we're saying is it's a way to create a more, among other things, a more personalized type of learning, as opposed to, AI created learning is going to replace yours. No, it'll more incorporate what you're already doing and make it more personalized in a more kind of dynamic way, potentially.
Yeah, well, or it can help you produce it at scale, right? Like if you're talking about, there's a tremendous amount of writing that goes into building quality training. And so using it as a way to maybe, if you, like, I live in a listicle format. My head is lists upon list is how I think about stuff, right? And so being able to input a list into an AI language model like Joel was, like ChatGPT, and then have it take that into a first pass of a voiceover script for an e-learning course is immensely valuable for someone like me. Now, it requires review, right? Use it as a tool. So our use cases is trust but verify, right? In all things with AI. So it's like, I recommend using it as a drafting tool, and then use your subject matter expertise that you have as an individual or on your team to validate things. But once, and then the coolest thing about it, it's a little scary with how fast it's moving, but you can train your language models, and your AI tools will learn iteratively over time, and will only get more and more valuable to your operation and your workflows.
That's great. Joel, I think you mentioned this earlier with, in your first comments, but you talked about risk assessment. So maybe you could elaborate on that some, like how will AI help with that? And will it, like the other things we were discussing, it's not going to replace people. There'll still be the oversight, right? I mean, so how do you see those two things working together?
Well, to start out with the risk assessment question, as I mentioned, AI can analyze vast amounts of data far faster and more accurately than a human team could. It can identify patterns and potential risks that might not be immediately apparent to you and I. Machine learning algorithms can also assess historical data. So they can look back in your processes and your procedures and testing data. And basically, to Chase's point about training these things, you can train them on your facility to identify areas of risk. And then, of course, human beings would be responsible for ultimately implementing any new process changes or new capabilities that would be necessary to address those risks. with respect to the employee versus is this going to take our jobs kind of question. The way I think about it is it's basically augmentation over replacement. AI is designed to complement human workers by oftentimes handling the routine tasks or the time-consuming and perhaps boring or not so thrilling jobs that we might just want to automate through AI, and it's entirely capable of doing that, which gives us as employees and companies the benefit of not utilizing significant amounts of time on things that can be better handled by simply handing it off to AI. And alternatively, I think AI is actually more likely to create more jobs than to replace them. As it becomes more integrated into the food industry, new job roles are going to emerge that can include positions like AI maintenance, data analysis, AI-driven product development, supply chain management. These are all things where AI is going to be a tool. And at some point today, Ben, and I will leave it to you as our guide, I'd kind of like to get into the use of AI agents and how that will sort of interplay in this entire process of sort of onboarding AI to improve food safety.
Well, and Ben, if I could build off of Joel's point for a sec, I think so food safety, right? Talking to a bunch of food safety professionals is a very complex endeavor, right? And the audience I'm talking to, this better than I, in that regard. And so, if you're thinking about starting a journey with AI and figuring it out and experimenting, building off what Joel said, I wouldn't necessarily start with critical aspects of your food safety protocols if you haven't ever used it before. Mm-hmm. It is where you can see immense gains quickly is in that administrative area that every company struggles with and has things that they need to do. I would encourage anyone that's starting with that is think of AI as like an executive assistant. It's a virtual executive assistant that you can work with on administrative type tasks and organizing that aspects of things. And as you get a sense for how it works within your workflow, then you slowly add on to it, and it will open up your eyes on where there are natural integrations within your food safety system that you could leverage AI that allows you to have comfortable checks and balances. Because it just like everything with food safety, trust but verify, right? You train your employees, you put your best SOPs and processes in place. You trust that you have an excellent system, but you're running verification and validation protocols throughout your facility all the time. To the idea of AI, it should function exactly the same way, where you're constantly putting checks and balances in to verify and optimize your workflows based on efficiency gains. Again, because I agree, I don't think it's going to be something that necessarily takes jobs away. There are going to be jobs that we've never thought of even. One of the things that came up in our pre-planning for this conversation was like very similar to agents is like prompt writing for AI is a skill set that I think we'll see become prevalent in job roles, right? Is you can ask the same AI tool the same question, but if you ask it a different way, it's going to give you a different answer. And so that's where there's not a replacement for the boots on the ground experience of working in a food manufacturing facility. The more experience you bring into the AI model, the more valuable it's going to be for you. So I could go down this rabbit hole, so I'm gonna pull myself back out and throw it back over to you.
No, it makes sense. It's almost like just as technology is advancing, for instance, not maybe all that different in a sense in somebody being skilled at SEO, coming up with the right SEO search terms and knowing how to make Google work for them as opposed to somebody else getting different results, not knowing what to put in there, what to think of it. I mean, there's always going to be a new thing that people have to master. But I do think it's such a good point. Yeah, absolutely. There's always going to be a new thing. But I do think it is good. That is a good headline to take from this, and it's Joel saying it'll create new jobs. So that's what we want people to take away. The more optimistic one, I think maybe it's too. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to talk over you. Your marketing example is a very good example. So if I was I hate the term, but I'm going to say it anyway, small to medium sized business, right? To where your head count is, you're dealing with you're not going to grow your team. You can't add all these people. You got to try to get the most out of your team. If you don't have a marketing department and a marketing lead, it is one of the areas that has exploded with AI usage, to be able to have it build marketing plans for you and you work with it. That's a perfect example of if you're running a single facility and you want to try to improve on your marketing, you want to try to improve that, but you don't have the budget to bring on a headcount, or you're in that chicken and egg, can I justify the headcount? I need to see the return. I realize we weren't planning on talking about marketing as a use case, but Ben, it's a really good one of how, an ops manager or a facility manager looking to try to scale could leverage the tool to supplement their existing team without having to bring on a full headcount right now.
Mm-hmm. A good question here. Just on that subject of writing prompts, how would somebody get better? Is it just a matter of practice makes perfect, or it's also new to so many people, What would you guys have?
Chase, do you want that, or would you like me to answer?
Go for it. You take a first stab at it, and then I'll fill in after.
Sure. Well, I would first like to touch on, Chase, you made the point, trust but verify, and that is so crucial at this time, because you simply at this point, for instance, let's just take ChatGPT as an example. It is an extremely helpful tool. It can do a lot of things that are really impressive, but you also want to make sure that you're not necessarily relying on the feedback it gives you, because sometimes it's incorrect, or sometimes it's outdated, or sometimes it's for whatever reason just not exactly what you're looking for. And to help get the answer that you need and is accurate, it's critically important that the prompt you're feeding into the machine is as buttoned up as possible. So you want to make sure that your prompts have clarity of purpose, right? You want to be clear about exactly what you're looking to achieve. And to do so, you want to be specific, you want to be detailed, provide context, use clear instructions. And then experimenting a little bit with length and structure can also give you different feedback. So one of the things that I like to do is I'll take raw data. Let's say I have a client who provides me with temperature data or some other form of raw production data, and I want to analyze it without necessarily going through 500 pages of records. I can feed that into an AI and have it spit back out a report that will give me whatever I want. Let's say I want the temperature violations that have occurred on Thursday put into the third column of a spreadsheet that can be imported into Microsoft Excel. And it will go through a very lengthy document, hundreds of pages, pull out the information you want and put it into a report or a form that allows you to easily review it and then check it for accuracy and make sure that it is indeed giving you what you asked for. But again, with respect to prompt writing, it is important to continually be clear, be as detailed as possible, without necessarily being excessive, and then iterate and refine as you work through what works and what doesn't work as well.
Yeah. I imagine it also can differ from one platform to another. Also, the how much your particular way of asking has the right.
I think, but building off of Joel, I agree with everything Joel you just said. I think it boils down to kind of two things for me. And Joel mentioned it. The first word is context. So when working with any AI language model, we'll just stay in the ChatGPT or Gemini with Google as another example. That we'll include a list of just a bunch of AI tools that are out there in the PDF that we reply. But providing context can be an art, right? So and the more granular and the more detailed you can be, and that's really why it works so well with expertise, right? Where somebody who carries 10, 15 plus years of boots on the ground experience writing prompts for an AI can be so powerful, because you can give it the subtlety of the context in a way that allows it to refine its answer. So I cannot overemphasize that the models can't gather context without your input. And the second is, I've found it to be incredibly helpful to start off the conversation with a prompt that tells the AI model what role you want them to serve in your scenario, right? Do you want them to serve in a role of a consultant who's providing you work for hire in product report based on all of these various inputs that we're going to give you, right? Or I would like you to serve as a curriculum ghostwriter with expertise on SQF quality, SQF for food manufacturing, and BRC as GFSI schemas. We're located in these facilities, and we need to take into consideration these regulatory, right? So the more specific you can get with the context, but coupled with the role that you want the AI model to serve from a job functions perspective, are probably the two top. And I've spent hours playing with these things, and I mean, it's an exponential difference in the answers you'll get as you refine that context and role. And so I have chat conversations saved in a variety of AI tools, and they're all themed based on what role function do I want them to serve in the context of that current conversation.
That's excellent. And I would just add, to the same point, one thing that I do when I use these tools is, I imagine if let's say I have a HACCP program, and I want to update my HACCP program. It hasn't been updated since 2019, right? Now, I could email a consultant and say, hey, I work for a cereal company, make me a HACCP program, right? And that consultant's going to make me a HACCP program, but it's not going to be, particularly specific to my processes. It's not going to address the things that I might want it to address. Instead, what I'm going to tell that consultant is, this is my company. This is what we do. This is where we see risk. These are the products we're using. Based on that, and here's our existing HACCP program. Would you rewrite our HACCP program to update it for, the regulatory changes that have occurred? And, let's say it's been 10 years since you last updated your HACCP program. Hopefully it hasn't, but then you're going to get a much better product. And similarly with AI, you want to be talking to them and providing all the information that you might otherwise provide to a person. And to Chase's point, that specific character context is extremely important. You can write into the GPT, for instance, and say, I want you to do this from the perspective of a strict FDA regulator who is, very by the book and wants, everything exactly in tune with the regulatory requirements. You're going to get a much different answer than if you say, write a HACCP program for somebody who, is at a 6th grade reading level and has never worked in the food industry before. And it's just simple enough for them to understand the basic premise. You're going to get two very, very different products. One's going to be ultimately helpful to you from a regulatory standpoint. The other one might be, a good starting point if you're looking to train somebody on the very basics of what's required in the food industry.
Seems like an interesting or an important thing to keep in mind with a lot of these tools. Working with them to some extent isn't much different than working with people. You got to be clear. You got to be, express what you want. You got to make it clear what you need, and otherwise, they can't really provide you what you want that well. I guess it's not that much different than human beings. So, Joel, I wanted to ask you, one of the more difficult aspects of food safety is when people try to get on top of what's happening in their food supply chain. And how do you see AI tools helping people with that? Tracking things and just staying on top of everything.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think, pretty remarkable. Now, there's still, as has been mentioned repeatedly, in early days, but from a traceability standpoint, AI would be able to enhance your traceability by tracking and analyzing data all the way back, farm to table. And there are ways to, utilize AI in an immutable fashion. Blockchain applications for food safety were all the rage a few years ago, and everybody was talking about it, and that's since seemed to curtail a little bit. But the blockchain tool is still just a phenomenal tool for traceability, again, because it's immutable. It can't be gone back and changed. And so AI will be able to monitor conditions under which food is stored and transported, right? It can be, let's say it's the refrigeration or the temperature of the trailer, that can automatically be uploaded now into a system. You can go all the way back to the field in which the farm was grown, and that data too can be implemented into a system. And then the AI can take all of that data, farm to fork, and put it into basically a format that allows you to ask or answer any question you might have. This product, lot number X produced on this day, give me a report. And it can punch out a report. This is the entire process. This was proof that the temperature was maintained during shipping. This is what area of the field it was grown. And then in terms of demand forecasting, AI is able to analyze consumer trends, historical sales data, and then any other external types of factors that you might want to use, weather patterns, to accurately, or at least fairly accurately, forecast your demand. And this would, of course, help in managing inventory, reducing waste, and ensuring that food products are fresh and safe and reaching the consumer when they're supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that seems like one of the, traceability seems like one of the things we're having, the tools that can really crunch all that data would, it would help a lot.
And yeah, we previously talked about recalls, to be able to eliminate that entire process of saying, okay, well, we know this product is implicated. What does that mean for every other product? With AI applications, taking this, enormous data set, provided that the AI is properly trained, you can say, lot X is implicated. What else do I need to recall? And rather than hours or days, within minutes, you have a data set that can tell you, okay, this is the scope of the recall. These are the I guess borders on each side, and why. Boom, trigger the recall. It's going to be smaller, so it's going to cost you less. Because you're going to have that accurate data. It's also going to be more timely, which is going to help from a regulatory and customer standpoint. It's hard to overstate how helpful this can be. And again, when you're thinking about those sorts of things, it's just not necessarily something that is going to be in any person's purview, as the base of their job. It's just a way to make what they otherwise have to do much easier and much more efficient to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially when there's an outbreak of some sort, something potentially very dangerous. Times of the essence, and mm-hmm. not just in terms of actual harm to people, but harm to your company and all types of things. So, and
I also do have personal information that FDA is working currently to develop and roll out AI tools for traceability mm-hmm. and to mitigate the scope of outbreaks, and so. What tools those are ultimately going to be? What's that?
Well, I was just saying, Joel, you touched on it. Time, when it comes to recall management, is priority number one. And so it becomes a tool that allows you to respond to stuff like that much, much faster. And then, yes, there is a monetary value to that. But again, your impact to the consumer base is drastically smaller the faster that you can get out ahead of it. And so it's really want to emphasize that point. I will say that, again, the caution, there's so much power with the AI side of things, but one thing I will just caution us about on this is the work has to be there to develop the data set that you're utilizing the models with, right? And so there is for your operation a fundamental need to maintain the data that you want it to utilize in. And the better your data is, the better the AI is, right? And so that's just a piece of kind of the AI process that we shouldn't undersell, is that if you have your systems in place where you're tracking the necessary information, and we've touched about traceability with the new FSMA traceability requirements that I think it's January of 26, I think is when those
I think it's January
start to come in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so the requirements that as operators in the food space to maintain visibility across supply chain is only going to get more onerous, because the consumer is going to continue to want to see that from a global supply chain perspective. And so it's like those data sets and that get astronomical for organizations to manage. And so I think this particular topic around traceability, supply chain, and recall, as you were touching on, Joel, the FDA is actively working on ways to build tools that the industry can use. I think we will see a tremendous explosion of innovation in this particular area of the food supply chain. Just food industry as a whole will happen on what we're kind of talking about right here. Because there's
Agreed.
such
And the
an
same
important
with like
market.
indicator organisms in your facility. AI properly trained can learn to evaluate that data and identify either places in your facility or concerning trends that might indicate the need for action that simply would never be, identified by a person, just because it's disparate data that's over time that would only be meaningful in retrospect. The AI is going to be able to capture that at the front end, potentially, preventing recalls and outbreaks in the first place, or telling you, hey, you got to put a little bit more elbow grease into this particular line, or whatever it may be. And an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So I'm really excited to see how those things play out.
Yeah.
Well, and like we touched about earlier, the technology's moving so fast, but that we could see some incredible innovation show up on this exact topic that we're talking about between now and the end of the year. That's what's so crazy about it, is there really hasn't been that many moments where technology has been on this 10x hockey stick from an innovation perspective, like we're watching right now. So it's like, if you're considering using it, again, I would set it up on a Google alert type situation, so you can just monitor it and see it coming through, because you'll see there's always something new coming across, and people are pushing the boundaries so much that it's a great just technology RSS kind of feed to monitor right now, because I've never seen anything move this fast.
Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely one of those. It's definitely a rapidly advancing technology that you're starting to see. It's unavoidable in the sense you're starting to see it everywhere, even in places that it's not quite the same. But it's often like Internet of Things, where you start to have Wi-Fi capable devices everywhere. And it was just everybody wants it. Next thing you know, it's in your toaster, or places where you didn't necessarily need it. And we're going to see maybe some use case of AI. This is going to be kind of everywhere to some extent. What do we think? I know this kind of this. It's all kind of interconnected in terms of things like traceability and risk assessment. But how do you think it'll make compliance easier for companies? In other words, there'll be less violations, less fines, less companies having to slow down and correct things.
Absolutely. I think using AI tools to augment the development of your own processes. You can run your HACCP plan through ChatGPT and say, talk about what your company does and is, and run your HACCP program through, and it will identify, potential deficiencies. Again, you got to go back and check, and it's sort of a starting point. But additionally, having programs that can track your compliance paperwork, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis to make sure that all the proper data is being entered, that the day-to-day forms that are supposed to be completed are, and what AI will be able to do is on a day-by-day or hour-by-hour basis, evaluate that. And if something's missing, it can call attention to that fact and say, hey, the temperature log for 4 to 6 p.m. Received an error, right? And that's something that can and does go overlooked in the craziness of the day when you've got all these things going on, and that's a very quick way. It's almost like I forget what one of you mentioned it, but your kind of personal assistant giving you those reminders. Going back to this idea about how fast things are happening, one of the interesting anecdotes about, again, ChatGPT is, it went from 0 to 1 million users in 5 days. And that is, enormously fast. I believe, it was 16 months for LinkedIn, I think 10 months for Facebook, 3.5 years before Netflix got to 1 million users. A million users in 5 days is extraordinary. And I think, as you mentioned, Chase, we're going to continue to see these applications coming out, and the amount of money that's being poured into developing these AI applications, there's going to be some really neat stuff we're able to do in the very near future, and it's only going to get easier.
Having not lived through it, the thing that I think about it is what it must have what it must have been like to live through the race to the moon, of how fast that was going, and just the energy about it. It's got a similar vibe to it, as it's not just ChatGPT anymore. A lot of players like Google Gemini, if you guys haven't played around with that, is a really interesting tool that is integrated with the G Suite that does a lot of this kind of operational admin stuff we were talking about. So it's fascinating. Ben, I'd like to build off what Joel just said. It's really interesting. I think that it's a double-edged sword, a little, in a good way. Of will AI help compliance become easier, faster, cheaper? So for the organizations that are committed to food safety and food safety culture and everything that means, I think AI is going to be an unbelievable assist and value add for organizations that are not really committed to food safety and the culture of it. And it's more about the minimum in that regard. And I know that as a general industry, it's one of the things I'm most proud of is that there's so many people passionate about food safety, but there are those that everybody knows, those organizations and operations that it's like, probably not going to eat that food anymore after you learn some things. And so for those organizations, I think it's going to be immensely painful because it's going to have the ability that it's going to level up what the minimum is at some point because of the value it provides. And so for the folks that have the systems in place or have the record keeping in place and are really actually doing that and operationally adhering to a food safety system and a HACCP plan as an example, immensely valuable because they're going to have that data set and the historical records where it's going to 10x their capability to do analysis and whatnot. For the folks that are not doing it that way and have what they need on paper to pass whatever they need from a minimum perspective, but they're not living that as a culture and really doing, because it's an immense amount of work to run the safety system for a facility, right? If they're not doing it, they're not going to have the data sets that somebody who was, and AI is not going to be as valuable. But I think we're headed for an optic shift where regulatory bodies are going to go, look, these tools make you providing what I want super easy. Why can't you provide me this? Like at the level of granularity, that is going to become an awkward conversation for folks. And I think that's where there could be an adjustment period where they're not going to feel like it's speeding them up. at all. They're going to feel like it's immensely slowing them down, but what it really is it's leveling folks that are not what the minimum should really be. It's going to level that up, and our floor for what the minimum is going to change. I don't know when, but over the next couple of years, that's where I really think it'll differentiate, and you'll see the ones that really have that commitment to it, and it's part of that the idea of food safety culture being fundamental to their organization. AI is going to be a game changer for those guys, without question.
I think that relates to something I was thinking during this talk, and it might be a bit kind of a broad, sort of philosophical kind of question, but is it sort of like, to what extent is it the people in the workplaces leading the AI, and what extent is it them leading us? In other words, it can't be a type of thing to come in and just tell you exactly all that you need to do. It's more, you need those people who can then guide it, how to guide them. Does that make sense? Like which of it, what's the breakdown there? I guess it depends.
The proverbial chicken or egg, which came first, kind of conversation. I find that I want to say two different things and talk out of my mouth at the same time with it.
Go for it.
Based on role and skill set, right? I think it will be us leading AI. When you're talking about entry-level workforce and frontline employees and high turnover positions, I think it can invert and go the other direction. That AI becomes a tool that can run onboarding programs for new hires of employees and automate what learning plans they need to be assigned, assess current levels of understanding, and go, okay, they need to go through this version of this, right? And so when you think about it from that perspective, I absolutely think AI can lead from that perspective, right? As people are coming into, but it's because the leadership of the organization has trained it on how to do that, right? And so when you have a training coordinator or an HR specialist onboarding new people, they've spent the legwork to get the system in place that now they can just tell the AI tool, new employees starting this day, here's their job role, and then it takes care of the rest, right? And so for that new hire, they're very much being led by AI until you level it up, right, from an employee perspective. Joel, thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. And to the chicken and egg point, the AI is learning from us. It's the information that we give to the AI that the AI then uses to do whatever ultimately it does. And so to the extent that you have the best AI programs in the world, it's not going to do you any good if they're not. If they don't have an effective means of analyzing what you do and what rules are governing what you do. By the same token, the AI, once trained and capable, is going to do all the things that Chase said. And not only are you going to, be able to identify, for instance, regulatory shortfalls or lack of food safety culture, your products, to the extent they have problems, and anybody who doesn't have a solid food safety culture, their products have problems. It is an absolute certainty. I see it over and over and over again. And it's not just the regulators that are going to be able to identify these shortfalls. It's your customers. Your customers' AI programs are going to be able to take all that data from all these suppliers and look at it, and they're going to be able to figure out which one is the problematic product. The CDC is going to be able to trace foodborne illnesses much more effectively as time goes on. It's going to do much better pattern identification, and it's going to be able to get back to the source of whatever that outbreak was in a much more effective fashion than it currently can. So again, I think to the extent that you're not doing the right thing, the walls are going to start closing in very, very quickly. And I, for one, am glad for that. The tools are out there. I think at this point, everybody understands, food safety culture is important. Nevertheless, because it's also expensive, not as expensive as not having food safety culture in the long run, as far as I'm concerned. But it is expensive, and it's a place where, unfortunately, we tend to see corners cut by people who cut corners. And fortunately, those companies are relatively few and far between in the food industry. And I expect them to become much fewer and further between as basically we develop the means to kind of look at everything all at the same time and derive, any appropriate conclusions from it in ways that, simply was never possible at any point in human history.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's why it's such a fascinating kind of era we're entering into. Well, this has been quite a fascinating talk, and I think anybody listening, there's quite a few takeaways for how you can implement these tools in the workplace, and also how you can use them correctly or use them better in time. And it's just, it's exciting to see how it's going to play off in specifically in terms of food safety, and how, with all the kind of concerns or trepidations people may have about it, the end result is that we have safer food and safer, communities and safer people. Then, I mean, that's a net gain, definitely. Before we sign out, I just want to show people where they could get. Here's a list of some of the tools that we've been talking about. And I mean, there's so many. By the time, if you're watching this a week or two from now, there might be a few more on this list we could add. Definitely, you mentioned ChatGPT, Gemini. I've used it for keyword research. It's quite good. Dolly, images a lot of people have used. All types of Descript is a very good transcription service. Quite a few. Also, you can check out on the bottom right there, you got the FSMA food traceability chatbot. That's by the team here at Rootwurks, and that's going to help you find where in the regulations you're going to find what you need to know about implementing FSMA 204D by January 2026, like we were talking about earlier. So that's another thing that's going to help people just in the workplace, meet the demands of this industry. And if anybody's looking, and in terms of all of these, later on this week, we're going to send out an email to everybody who registered with this slideshow, and it's going to have links to all these different AI tools. And so you can definitely have some fun with those. We're also going to put a glossary in there with some AI tools, just to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about out here. And other than that, if you'd like to see what our expert guest here, Joel, is working on, you can reach out to him on LinkedIn or at the Food Industry Counsel. Joel, those are the best ways to get a hold of you? If they're one
yes, they are.
Awesome.
I don't have an AI agent you can contact just yet, but hopefully soon.
If so, you're a very convincing one. No, we're not there yet. I don't think the technology, but definitely reach out. We're big fans here at Rootwurks, obviously. And if you want to check out what we're doing, just go to rootworks.com, and you can also check out the workshop on Rootwurks. That's where you'll find all of our courseware and things you can order, and different training materials. So in the meantime, guys, thanks for being with us here today. And interesting times.
Yeah,
thanks, Francis. Real quick, I just have a question. And forgive me if I'm mistaken, but are you guys going to be rolling out some AI training relatively soon? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we are. Like, our roadmap is, we're taking a slow approach with AI as it relates to training and food safety, but we're using it internal in a lot of ways, and so we're working on some stuff to extend it into our enterprise platform, just so you can continue to operate in an individual tech stack, right? And so the areas that we're focused on is around corrective action, preventive action plans, and content authoring. Our first step is we've figured out how to restrict language models to a subset of information. And so we've started building Ben mentioned the traceability bot. And so that bot is built off of the ChatGPT language models, but it's a hosted environment, and we've restricted its access to only FSMA regulatory docs and FAQs around it. So it gets hyper focused. And we've had some internal kind of breakthroughs on how we're able to kind of do some of that prompt training. And that's what we're really looking to extend into our solutions.
That is so cool.
It's,
I love that because so often when you search these things, you're getting extraneous, nonsensical data that's, coming from, who knows where or who knows when, and to be able to kind of limit it to those subsets. Wow, what a fantastic tool. I'd also be curious for any of the attendees comment, on Facebook or I'm sorry, LinkedIn or wherever it's convenient on interesting ways that you found AI to be helpful or novel uses. I'm always excited by that, and it can be helpful for all kinds of.
Yes, it's definitely a subject we're going to keep talking about. So reach out to us, and we'll keep you posted about what we're working on with AI at Rootwurks. And see you at the next webinar.
Thanks, Joel. Pleasure, man.
Thank you, Chase. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
See you guys.
Yeah, you too. Bye.